Welcome, everybody. It's another episode of the Shop Notes podcast. It's Phil, John, and Logan today, episode number 201. On today's episode, we're going to talk about and respond to some listener comments and questions. We'll also address a finishing dilemma, and then we'll take a look at the current issue of Popular Woodworking Magazine. So thanks for listening, everybody. And just want to give a shout out to this episode's sponsor. This episode is presented by Epilog Laser. Quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloglaser.com. All right. Last week was episode 200, milestone. So now we start on the next 200.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we do. So I'll just read a few comments, a couple of questions in here too. So one is from Carl Gustafson. He says, if Phil's finding childhood toys in the antique stores, it's a clear sign that it's time to embrace his inner geezer. Get bifocals, start conversations with, well, when I was your age, and grumble about kids on the lawn. Oh, and don't forget the early bird special at the restaurants. Also, John, spot on about the Festool and Mac. From a guy who wrote Mac software for 20 years and has already embraced his inner geezer. So there you go. Kevin Thomas says, congrats on 200, and he's curious to whether Logan's shop flip-flops are steel-toed.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. I think it only counts that they're steel-toed because of all the little medallions that you put in the holes.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The what are those, croc
Gibbets.
pogs or whatever?
Gibbets.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Gibbets?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Didn't know that.
Okay. Walter Riggs says 200. Huzzah. Well done, y'all.
Clearly he hasn't listened for very long.
Right.
It's all about quantity over quality here.
Yeah. Yep. Another one from Carl says, on a serious note, if you're making something in a contemporary style, contemporary lighting is appropriate, in my opinion. Mid-century, perhaps one of those showcase lamps. Sheridan, probably should avoid candles or gas lamps in it. I agree with Logan. Don't cheap out on the cord. If you put in the effort to making something, going cheap on the cord is the last thing that you should do.
That's right.
Blue or purple underlight kits are right out. Save them for your pickup truck. I mean, word to the wise right there.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Miko says, need to rename the show to Logan's Shop Notes.
Ouch.
Yeah.
It hurts because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the quiet one, though.
Province 2010 says, ironic that Logan's problem with having to move many tools in his shop to complete trim work could be resolved with a shopsmith.
Then I just have to move one tool.
Right.
But it would half-ass all the tasks.
Yeah. I thought we were going to get through a whole episode without bringing up the shopsmith, but we didn't even make it 5 minutes.
Nope, not at all. Unji says, no giveaway on the 200th podcast. Maybe a segmented scroll saw pattern, numbers and letters, ash with a background cedar and frame in red oak, all stained golden oak.
Somebody's trying to press buttons.
Yeah. Terry Lucas says, Logan, you have two guys there that could help you knock out your projects.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Feed the Chunk 9836 says, where do we find the notes with the links that you talked about? The show notes page usually goes up the day or two after an episode posts. It's whenever I get a chance to do it. And you can find that at shopnotes.com/podcast. All the episodes and the show notes are listed there, so you can go back and check those out. In a perfect world, we would be able to link those show notes pages on the YouTube episode as well, but the guy who does that just doesn't have time. So
he's asking for an 85% effort, and we only have 40% to give. So
yes. Puppy Doc Bob says, did I just hear a job opening announcement to be Logan's production assistant. How do I convince my wife to let me retire from the current job, move to Des Moines, and apply to be Logan's probably never going to happen project assistant?
I can't afford to pay you.
It's an unpaid internship.
Right. Yeah. But think of the experience that you would gain.
Yeah.
Or experiences.
Yes.
There's just so much there. Okay. I do appreciate everybody who writes in, whether it's snarky comments or questions or whatever about what we're talking about. It makes the show a lot better, and it's also heartening to know that people are listening. So there you go.
I gotta say,
yeah.
Before we start, this was a long burn. Remember when I mentioned I was looking for an anvil if any of our listeners had one they wanted to get rid of?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Randy came through.
Okay.
So I got to drive up to Minneapolis to get it, which I will. I mean, I'm up there fairly regularly anyways. But he's got a pretty nice
drive it down.
Yes, that. Ooh, well, see, the problem is there's some horse trading going on. So Randy was like, "Hey, I got this anvil I got from my father-in-law." He bought his father-in-law's house, and it just didn't move. It was at the house. And so I'm going to cut him some lumber and trade him a couple of restored hand planes for it, which I need to send him some pictures. I got busy this last week. So that one, it came through.
Okay.
So now if anybody has a Case 1845C skid loader they want to sell me, that's the next one.
Right.
This is the classified section of the podcast.
True story.
Way long ago when I was growing up, the big radio station in Wisconsin where I lived, the WHBY, had a program called The Good Neighbor Show. And there was a whole big section on like buy, sell, trade or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really time, frankly, to bring back the informal economy.
See, I thought
tax-free.
I thought you were gonna say the local radio station did like World War II updates, like from the battlefront.
Well, I mean, right? Yeah, do you just like the newsreels that they played over in front of the movies when I watched as a kid? Yeah, yep. You had the Bugs Bunny shorts, and then the newsreel, and then the feature presentation. So, yep. All right, here's the big question to start things off on a discussion, and I'll put the photo that I'm referencing on show notes. A couple seasons ago on the TV show, we did an outdoor patio table. I don't really want to call it a picnic table because that conjures kind of Yogi Bear, kind of cross-framed plank-style table. This one was a round table with like a lapped base, and I think it has a really cool look to it. We made it out of cedar, and we painted the base. I think at the time we gave it just a basic outdoor oil finish, and then I ended up getting it, and then I put on 2 coats of another outdoor oil-based finish. And I was frankly a little surprised on how fast that finish failed. And right now, the top looks like the way it looks that you'll see in the photo. Kind of gray in places. Other places, you still have the cedar color. When it rains, it has more of a cedar color to it just because of the wetness of it. So my question and the dilemma that goes with it is, do I do something to make it just go all silver cedar color, using one of those aging solutions? Should I go back, sand, plane, scrape this, and then do outdoor oil on it again, fully knowing, and this is where the dilemma part comes in, is I already have an outdoor bench and 2 chairs that have natural finish on that I need to keep up with. And this just feels like another project on that.
Outdoor projects are stupid because of this reason. Like, because a couple seasons ago as well, we built an outdoor table that I have. Same freaking thing. And my wife's like, how can we get this thing to look good? I'm like, I'm not going to maintain it, man. Like, we can get it to look good by casting a concrete countertop for the top of it. I say let it go gray, and it is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. As you age and you get more gray hairs, are you going to dye your hair?
Right. To be fair, my kids have already, for everybody watching here, they've asked whether I have been touched by somebody with ice power because I have the like Princess Anna, like white thing going on right here. I'm not exactly sure how that.
But you're not going to dye your hair, right? So just leave the table, man. Just leave the table.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise it's a never-ending battle. You'll be doing it every year.
Yeah, every year, every other year, which, like I said, I'm already doing on the bench and the two chairs, which I'm fine with because those are relatively small. Small in the fact that they don't take up a lot of space in my shop to refinish, say early spring or end of the season or something like that. But a big table, because that's like a 4.5 foot, almost 5 foot square table. Like that's just a lot of real estate. Yeah. Because if you think of applying finish on it is a minimum 2-day process.
Yeah. I guess my bigger issue is that you have to sand it down. And I just freaking hate that. Like, that just is not fun. Like, Mark Spagnuolo, the Wood Whisperer, he just did a video on a new outdoor finish from like Rubio or somebody. Maybe it was Osmo. Where it was like one of those, like, you don't need to sand it when you reapply it. Like, if there was that type of finish that you could truly just apply a maintenance coat every year, I'd be more into it than having to sand it down, re-oil it. I mean, I've put teak oil on stuff before, and it's still like you said, it just that's what I put on my table from the TV show is teak oil. You have to sand it down. I mean, once that oil starts to fail, the UV and water seep into the top, raises the grain. It gets rough. It's never going to look the same. I have just pressure washed it, and that's okay, but it still leaves a bunch of fibers standing up.
Right.
So I said, let it go all natural.
Yeah. I think that's and I believe we've talked about this in the show, that's the big kicker is a lot of people will say, build a project out of XYZ outdoor idealized material because it turns a beautiful silvery gray. What they're not telling you is that from newly manufactured until you get to silvery gray is not a 2-week process. It's like a 3-year process. And in between, it looks like crap. Honestly, because some parts are turning gray. Other parts still have that color to it. It looks weird when it gets wet because of rain. All that kind of stuff.
They do make weathering, like some sort of weathering chemical or whatever. You get it to go gray or patina faster, but that doesn't seem like right either to get something looking all nice and then immediately age it.
Right.
So part of me, Phil, you brought it up when we were building this outdoor kitchen on this season, but like part of me is like, if I want to build a bunch of Adirondack chairs for like our fire pit, part of me is like, should I build those out of like a synthetic decking material? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like some of the black synthetic decking, obviously it has to be solid stuff. But I think you'd avoid it then. And honestly, like, I hate to say it, but I think the absolute best finish you can put on an outdoor piece of furniture is paint. Just coat that MFer as much as you can with an outdoor paint. And that gives you, I think, the most time between completion and painting and having to do maintenance on it down the road.
Right. Yeah, because the base is protected by the top. I get that. Mm-hmm. But we painted the base, and I think, honestly, after a few seasons, that base actually looks better.
Yeah.
You know, as the paint's aged. And I don't even remember what we used for paint on there, if it was just a acrylic or if we did just a latex house paint. I don't remember what it was. In any case, I find that it looks really nice to me.
Yeah.
And I've been veering more towards, I don't know, aged finishes, not in like a faux sense, but just like,
just natural.
This is a project that's outside, and
yeah,
this is what happens when it's outside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's a discussion question that I'm opening up to the universe here. So if you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks about that, like, or what you've done on your own projects and how you navigate with, we'll call them customer expectations, if you're going to let something go silver for that in-between transitional time. So I did build a grill cart for a friend of mine and did the weathering solution on that. And I made that out of white oak and then turned that silver with the weathering solution. And I think it looks really cool. So anyway, just a thought. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today, Logan, I know you are in the throes of completing, say, shall we call it putting down another issue of Popular Woodworking.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about one that readers have right now, the August 2024 issue of Popular Woodworking.
John's holding it up.
And just kind of run through some of the things that were in there. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, Logan, just giving some background on authors and projects. And
because I have to go back and look and see what was in that issue because I dump it all out of my mind, you guys.
There's a very nice looking cherry tool cabinet on the front.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that
I'll put a link to it on the show notes page so you can see the one that we're talking about.
Yeah. So that issue, the one that was August 2024, had a handful of projects in there, some fairly small projects, and then what we did is we included a few sections of ShopNotes Magazine because ShopNotes is currently digital only. So we decided that we would introduce, all 85,000 Pop Wood subscribers to the style that ShopNotes is. So we included not only a project, but also one of our articles out of there. So the projects in that issue are a torsion table from Doug Stowe. So it has 4 legs and then octagon stretchers that kind of connect all the legs. They are cut octagon on the table saw, and then they are tenoned on the end with the Veritas tenon cutter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's a fun little project. Shot that down in Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
How did most people, I think, if they're familiar with Doug Stowe, think like his middle name is actually Boxes.
Yes, Doug Boxes Stowe.
Yeah.
Doug does a lot of stuff that's not boxes. He just happens to be really well known for his boxes. He has books on tables, books on desks, books on cabinets. Like, he does a lot of different things. I think he just was really made his name in the box world because nobody was really doing them at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, he does a lot of things that are not boxes.
Yeah. He also teaches too, right?
Teaches a ton. He teaches at Mark Adams, Eureka Springs School of the Arts. I think he does some stuff at other locations throughout the U.S. Very good teacher. The one thing that is really nice about Doug is that he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, but he also has a way of simplifying stuff. Very, very, almost like you're like, that's dumb because that's so simple. Like we published a cabinet. Oh God, it's probably 4 or 5 issues ago. It was a cabinet by Doug Stowe. It was painted green with milk paint, had like a wheat carving on the front.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's just doweled together. It's like, that's dumb, but it makes it so approachable. So Doug has a very, very good way of making stuff approachable, and not overcomplicating a design, which is really nice. So that torsion table's in there. We also have a small smartphone amplifier by a gentleman by the name of Charles Mack. A lot of people will recognize that name if they are Woodsmith subscribers, because we've published a lot of Charles's tips before.
And he's been around for a lot of tips for most of the woodworking magazines.
He has. And I think he's written for other titles as well, maybe like Woodworkers Journal or Rockler or stuff like that. And so we have a little smartphone amp in there that's made of, it's basically a scrap wood project. And his approach is, hey, make a bunch of these and then do whatever you want with them, like paint them or do inlays or, wood burning or whatever, kind of a fun, just little thing to make. Then we have a live edge bowl, which is, that's an interesting thing to turn because there are some very particular ways you have to do things with a live edge bowl, especially if you're doing a burl bowl. That one is a burl bowl from Jimmy Clues. It's an elm burl, and because of the rough edge, you have a lot of hitting and missing. So it's a very technical thing to turn because you have a lot of air you're cutting or air where you're not cutting. So it's a very hard thing to turn. So that was an interesting little one.
So how do you, going back to that bowl then,
is
how do you, especially considering the turning that you've done, and you did the photos for this one, I know.
Yep.
Like what's that to watch or even to do when you're turning it where there's just a lot of negative space? Yeah.
You have to turn it as fast as you can.
Really?
Yes. As fast as you can without your lathe walking across the shop. The faster that piece is spinning, the easier and cleaner of a cut you're going to get.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, if you turn something at 10 RPM, okay, so it's making one revolution every 6 seconds and you're trying to cut it, it's going to be jumping. But the faster you turn it, the less amount of time you have to push the tool into that negative space.
Right. Because there's that pressure of you pushing the tool against the workpiece, and every opening, your tool kind of kicks out a little bit subtly.
Exactly. The same trip where we shot that elm burl bowl, man, that's hard to say. We also shot a winged bowl, which I have not published yet. And I'll shoot a picture for the show notes page. It is more or less a 2-inch thick by 4-inch wide board that is 14 inches long. And you chuck that in the lathe. So it's like a propeller, basically. And you're turning a bowl and you're putting an OG on this thing. It is insane to watch. And Jimmy told me, he's like, bloody hell, mate, this is the project that got me labeled as the world's most dangerous turner. And I was like, why is that? He's like, because you have to turn it at the maximum speed your lathe will go. So you are putting this board on, basically in this orientation, and you're spinning it at 3,000 RPM. So it's very scary sounding. And I'm not one to be scared by the lathe generally. So yeah, it's all about technique. And while these things may appear fairly simple to somebody that doesn't turn, if you've done any sort of turning, you'll know that there's a lot of technical know-how that has to go into it.
This episode is presented by Epilog Laser. Quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloglaser.com.
Yeah. So there was the torsion table, the smartphone amp, that bowl. Then we included a cherry tool cabinet from ShopNotes. That was a pretty nice one. Was that a Chris Fitch design?
No, it wasn't a Chris Fitch design.
Wow.
Was it a John Doyle design?
Baker. Yes,
it was a John Doyle design. Look at that.
That's right.
I was just weird. It was just weird because it's not arts and crafts style. So
there's some arts and crafts in it.
It's kind of
a little bit.
John, you want to talk about that tool cabinet and its design?
That was a long time ago, so I'm trying to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You dump it out of your mind, man.
I know. Yeah, it is kind of arts and craftsy because it's got, just the square style and rail paneled doors in there. I don't know if you can see. We'll share a picture on the show notes page, I'm sure. But
yeah.
So doors, lots of little drawers, plywood box construction with hardwood face frames. Trying to think what we did for the molding on the top was kind of like a stacked type of deal with, I think we just use, it looks like a crown molding, but I think it's just different, smaller moldings we did with on the router table.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it looks like a big kind of daunting project. There's a lot of doors and drawers in case, but it's like, you could do it, make the base and then make the top later or whatever. But
right.
Yeah.
How did you do you think back to how you came up with the design for it? Do you remember that?
You're putting the pressure on now. This is like
Googled a lot of pictures.
Yeah. Just Google. But, yeah. No, I think I kind of looked at some of the tool cabinets we've had around here and took inspiration from those that we've done in the past and kind of added my own little style. I think Steve Johnson had some requests like to have lots of small drawers in the upper part because he's got lots of small tools. I'm just looking at the pictures here. Like chisels and small hand planes and that kind of thing that to kind of have them, up higher in the upper cabinet, so you can, see everything and get to all those tools. So,
yeah. I mean, I feel like those smaller drawers function essentially as trays, really.
Yeah.
That they fit in there, but you can just as easily pull that whole thing out, set it on your bench, and kind of keep, carving gouges from rolling and falling on the floor or whatever.
So that was the project we decided to put in. And then we included an article that I wrote on the Tormek wet grinder. Kind of, what it's used for, how it's used, stuff like that. And then we had a couple of department articles in there. We did two different ones, kind of revolving around the shop. So one of them was kind of best practices for dust piping. So hard line dust collection, the different types of pipe available, why you should use like designated dust collection pipe versus PVC. Okay. The difference between like snap lock, the lock together and spiral piping, and then kind of some best practices.
And that a lot of that fell out of your own experience in putting up and planning for your shop, right?
Yeah, it did. Because there was a lot of things I did not know about hard lines and plumbing in a dust collection system. And because I didn't know it, I assumed a lot of our readers didn't know at least some of it. And so I spent some time on the phone with Jeff from Oneida he kind of walked me through. He's their president. He kind of walked me through, here's some of the best practices. Here's what we suggest. Here's why we suggest it. Here's what we don't suggest and stuff like that. So yeah, it was nice to be able to kind of pass that along.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people have a vague idea that hard lining is better than like flexible coiled ducting. But beyond that, I don't know that there's a lot of understanding as to why,
yeah,
or what whether you even have more choices beyond that. And then I think a lot of people just want to go like the cheap route. So they're like, well, I'll just get a bunch of PVC and that'll do it too.
Yeah. And there's a lot of engineering that goes into it. Like there's a lot of physics in it, between the drag and, sectional coefficients of different diameters of pipe. And, a lot of people think, oh, if all my tools are 4-inch, I need to run 4-inch everywhere. It's like, no, you actually need to run 7-inch everywhere and then go 4-inch drops, because when you step up to the bigger pipe, it can handle larger airflow. Oh. So there's a lot of physics that go into it. So, and then, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just do PVC pipe and that'll be perfect. And it works. But if you talk to any dust collection company, anybody that specializes in dust collectors, they will tell you do not use PVC for 3 reasons. A, it's hard to find PVC the right size for what we're using. Like you can't buy 7-inch PVC. You can order it, but at that point it's more than ordering 7-inch dust collection pipe. If you do get, like, let's say 4-inch and you have 4-inch ports, well, they won't hook together. You have to buy adapters. So you start adding adapter costs on top of that. Right. And finally, there have not been any commercial. How do I word this? There have not been any like commercial instances of explosions happening, but there have been instances of people in the home shops getting shocked with static electricity off of PVC. Yeah. To the point where it could cause some serious harm, especially if you had like a pacemaker or something, because they will build a huge charge on them. So there's a lot of reasons not to use PVC. And I mean, if I was going to compare the cost of this shop doing the snap lock, which is what I did. Snap lock's the tube that comes uncoiled and you snap the seam together. Yeah. Versus PVC. PVC would only be a couple $100 cheaper. So at the end of the day, it just isn't worth it to me. And then we did an article on shop flooring. Not necessarily, I talked in there about, options for your shop. If you're working in the garage, concrete sucks to stand on. Here's your options. I talked about doing an epoxy floor like we did, like you guys helped me. I think there might even be a picture of John and Phil in the magazine as we're putting page that 27. Stuff in. Yeah, that's right.
Right there.
Sorry. Oh yeah. Both Phil and John are in there.
Yeah, we're in there. Well, all 3 of us.
I'll make sure you guys get royalties. But then I talk about, doing sleepers where you lay down 2x4s on face or on edge and doing a subfloor over top. And, in my ideal world, that's what I would have done. It just didn't make sense in here. But that gives you the option to do like electrical and HVAC and dust collection underneath your floor, stuff like that. So I think there's a very, very good argument for that. I don't know if I mentioned, I think I originally had mentioned, the potential of doing carpet in your shop. And I think I removed that because I had to cut some space. I know people that have carpet in their shop and they don't mind it.
James Hamilton has that in his I say new, he's been there a few years now, but
yeah. Like if you had carpet tiles, it's squishy to stand on, it's squishier to stand on. You could replace tiles if you spill a finish. And it's non-slip. That's the bigger thing that from my standpoint, I want my shop floor to be non-slip. If you have polished concrete in your shop, you get sawdust on that, you'll break your freaking neck. Even if you have like an epoxy floor without my dad has epoxy in his garage and he has he put the grit in it, but once it gets wet or it gets a little dust on it, it's still slippery. Yeah. I'm not as concerned about the softness to stand on because you can put mats where you're working, which is also part of that article is the types of mats, what I like to use, where I like to use them.
Yeah. I've noticed the shop at Woodsmith here, if that gets a little glaze coat of sawdust and you have just say like a wide, heavy piece of material that you're trying to joint, joining an edge or a face, you end up doing the like flint step, trying to move that piece across, where you just
that's
around.
why we have all the dried glue on the floor,
right?
It's for traction. Yeah. But
so what about your shop floor then, since we've talked about it, and the way that you put that epoxy finish down, plus with the flake covering, have you found it slippery at all?
No, not at all. So the floor we did in here is a product from Spartan Epoxies. It's their HD Pro, I believe, epoxy, and it's a full flake coverage. So what we did is John helped me do this. Phil was mixing up the 2-part epoxy, which was a gray epoxy. John and I were spreading it out, and then after we would spread it out and roll it, I would walk around with a 5-gallon bucket full of vinyl flakes, and they were 16th-inch vinyl flakes. I think I had 300 or 600 pounds for this shop. And I just walked around while the epoxy was wet, and I just, threw it in the air and sprinkled it all over the floor. And that vinyl flake would stick to the epoxy. And then after it dried or cured, I scraped it up. I didn't scrape hard enough. I actually had to come back and sand it and then refinish it. But you scrape it up, you put a top coat over top of it, and then it's sealed down. When I put my first top coat on, I realized it was much more rough than I wanted. I don't think I scraped hard enough. I think that was my fault. So I actually ran a floor sander and sanded the floor real quick with 80 grit. And then I added another layer of the seal coat on top. And I freaking love this floor. This floor is one of my favorite things about the shop. It is equivalent of maybe 100 grit. You wouldn't want to slide your knees across it. It is, I don't have shoes on right now, and I'm pushing against it. I'm saying pretty rough, but not in a bad way. It has plenty of traction. I have never once thought I was going to slip on it. It sweeps up pretty easily. The fine dust does grab to it a little bit. So if I'm getting ready for a day of filming in here, I actually hook up my, I have one of the Rocklore floor sweepers for my dust collection system, and I roll that across the floor.
Okay.
It vacuums very easily.
Okay.
The one thing that does get stuck in it, and this isn't going to be an issue anymore, drywall mud sticks to it really badly, and then you gotta wash it out with water. Yeah, you gotta get it all wet and then scrub it out. And I have noticed, so I dropped some Danish oil in a couple of spots. If I cover that with mineral spirits, let it soak for 40 minutes or so, and I use a brass brush, I can scrub it right off.
Okay.
And not touch the floor. I freaking love it. I mean, I think if I was in an ideal world, if I was going to say what's my dream shop, it's going to be like a timber frame shop with a heart pine floor. I think I'd love that wood floor, but I think this is a close second.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed when we've been out there for photo and video shoots is that, it's still definitely a concrete floor. However, it has just enough give when you're touching it that it's almost like those rubber gym floors that were kind of in vogue for a while.
Yeah,
a little bit like that.
And that's actually, so the gentleman at Spartan Epoxy that I worked with to pick out this floor, his name is Jeff Doyle. So Jeff, no relation. So Jeff said, here's what I suggest. And he suggested the full flake coverage. And he said, the reason I suggest it is that you're adding, it's a small layer, but you're adding a layer of vinyl over top of the floor. So he's like, don't get me wrong, it's still a hard floor, but if you drop a tool on it, it's not like dropping a tool on concrete, because there is just that little bit of give. And you're absolutely right. There's just a very little bit of give to it. It's still a hard floor, but it's soft, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, And then, that article, we also talk about different types of like locational mats, like, for workstations. I talk about my favorite one that I use in the shop. So I have two. The one at my workbench is really thick and squishy. It happens to be a kitchen floor mat from Costco that my dog chewed up, so it got exiled to the shop. I love using yoga mats because they're thin. For some reason, my wife buys a new one every couple of years, and she doesn't even do yoga. But like, I get all the leftover ones, and they're super light. Like, I know we have ones in the shop, and I have a couple of other ones in here that are the thick, like 1/2 inch or 5/8 inch rubber, like workout mats, kind of like you'd put on a gym floor. They're so flippin' heavy. Yeah. Like, they're so heavy to pick up and vacuum around and stuff. The yoga mat works perfect for me. And you can buy them, like, I don't know if you want somebody's used sweaty yoga mat, but you can buy them dirt cheap at a garage sale.
Yeah. Yeah, those, if anybody's looking at those workout, like the thicker mats, I found that those are more expensive than if you just go to like a Tractor Supply place and get like horse stall mats. You can get like big pieces of those a lot cheaper. They're probably the exact same thing.
They probably are.
They just mark it up for the workout crowd.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty much that August issue that everybody has in their mailbox. If you're a subscriber, and if you're not, shame on you. But yeah, it was a fun one to put together. It was fun to stick some shop notes stuff in there, and I heard a lot of good feedback on it. So I'll be interested to see if we continue that. Maybe once a year, add some shop notes articles in, just to give people a little taste of what they're missing out on.
Yeah, it's good to see it on paper too.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something. That's one of the reasons why we did our annual yearbook, for lack of a better word, for shop notes, is because it's just nice to have it on paper and to have it as a reference piece. Mm-hmm. So it was cool to see it in print, and I loved it. It was cool. Yeah. And a good project too. I know John's, John's memory's failing on it, but it was it's a sweet tool cabinet. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, all right. I think that wraps up another episode of the Shop Notes podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. And like we've hinted at and talked about with today's episode, going over the current issue of Popular Woodworking, the reason that we can do the podcast here is because of subscribers to Popular Woodworking, Shop Notes, Woodsmith, Popwood Plus, all of that kind of stuff. Gives us the opportunity to extend out into other things. And that includes the live event that we have coming up in October. So you want to check that out. I'll put a link to that event on the show notes page as well. The registration for that should be going up pretty soon here. So plan for having some time in October to come visit us in Des Moines. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.